And one thing I noticed is that when I didn't have to work for money anymore, I got really good at my job because I had other purposes. It's like I'm like, I'm not doing this for money, right? I'm doing this for something else. And because of that, I realize I have this passion. And, as most entrepreneurs, it shifted at different phases over the last decade, but it's been a fun ride.
I think one of the number one things that make an entrepreneur successful is at the beginning, you have to be money motivated, right? You have to work for money. You have to be like, I need money, 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 money.
Yeah.
And then once you figure out how to make money, you're just like, what is this money? Like, I'm just going to put this money somewhere and make it do its thing so I can work for growth. All right, everyone, welcome to the show today. We have a guest with us who is the definition of living up to your potential. We'll start from the beginning. So he graduated from BYU with a Bachelor of Science in Psychology, later went and got a law degree and started a successful career as a civil litigation attorney. And you always wanted to be an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
So you decided to leave that. You moved your family from Phoenix all the way up to Detroit, Detroit,
freaking
Michigan,
cold.
Yeah.
and started a pest control business with your brother
Yep.
and grew that into a $100 million empire.
Yeah.
Now you have multiple businesses and now you're helping people do the same. So thanks for being on the show with us, Allan. We're excited to have you.
No, I'm stoked, guys. This is awesome. Like, we share a background, and so our paths have crossed. So I'm looking forward
Yeah,
to
connections all around in different areas.
it. Yep, for sure.
So, yeah, I'm mainly interested in like, you were always wanting to be an entrepreneur. When was it you like made the jump? Like, I'm gonna do this. And we're gonna move.
Dude, so a lot of people don't know that my first business failed. So I tried to start a pest control company before I went to law school, and it didn't work out. So I feel like I lost my way a little bit by going to law school, and not a lot of people will say that. Like, I was like on the wrong path at law school.
So how long after you graduated school did you go to law school?
So I had probably about a 2 or 3 year gap. So I graduated in 2006 and I started in 2009.
Okay.
So yeah, right at 3 years. Yeah, so I feel like being an entrepreneur is a personality trait, or it's something that, and there's like a spectrum, right? There are the people that are like, hey, I want a side hustle, but don't want to quit my day job, all the way to like, dude, I will live on my mom's couch if I can try to build something. And I don't know that I'm that far, but I'm pretty far.
Mom's couch far?
Yeah, like I'm, when my first business failed, I was staying at my younger sister's house.
Okay. So, but when you say failed, what exactly, like talk more about
Does
that.
fail mean?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's a really good question because, and I'm writing a book that has a section about failure and how our society views it incorrectly, right? Failure feels final. And interestingly enough, it was a pest control company. And now I own a pest control company that's market cap probably 100 million, give or take, depending on who you're talking to, in a bunch of different states. And so did my pest control company fail, or was that a stepping stone, right?
Part.
So, but at the time we, pushed pause on it for a few years. So that was 2007. I didn't feel like we were mature enough. It was my brother and I, we couldn't get along, didn't have enough capital, and it just kind of fizzled out. So, yeah, failure is it's a strong word.
Yeah, I'm glad you defined it
Yeah.
in that moment. So when you say what was your brother doing? So you just graduated from BYU at that time. What was your brother doing before you guys decided to go in?
He was doing door-to-door pest control sales.
Oh, okay. For someone else.
For another company.
So he already knew like how it ran, how it was running, how to recruit, stuff like that.
Yeah. I think 2006 was his first or second year, so he was still figuring out a lot of things. And then after I graduated from BYU, I actually moved from Provo to Columbus, Ohio, to work for the same pest control company, but I was doing like the operational side, like the technician stuff.
Okay.
So, and the idea was I was going to learn that stuff. He was doing the sales, and then we would put it together and figure it out.
So were you married at this point?
No, I got
Okay.
married in 2007, so it was after the point at which we pulled the plug on the first
Okay.
pest control company.
Okay, interesting. So I know when Benj and I started dating, he already like he hadn't bought into the company that he was at, but he was still like working, and he was working like a dog. Like you were working 5 o'clock in the morning. You didn't get home till like 10 o'clock in the morning, but then
10 o'clock in the morning.
10 o'clock at night.
10 o'clock at
Whoops,
night.
10 o'clock at night. But once you had me, it's a lot harder to manage pushing hard in your business and then still trying to nurture this newly newlywed relationship. So I can see. I was just wondering if that would be tough, but I guess that you guys were married for a little bit before you started over your pest control company again.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you point that out, because a lot of entrepreneurs or people that want to start businesses, they'll come to me and they'll be like, dude, Allan, I want to do what you're doing, where you have, all these businesses and you're kind of just, pulling some strings, leading the vision of the companies. So I'm going to go start 3 companies at the same time. It's like, no. First of all, that's not what I did. And your first company, you have to get it to a point where it's growing without you before you think about anything else. And that's hard for entrepreneurs because we're so scatterbrained.
Oh yeah.
We're like, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to invest in real estate. I want to do all these things. And you have to it's funny that you mentioned the relationship thing, because you have to understand hey, there's going to be a sacrifice. And I sat down with my wife. So at the time, I was practicing law in Phoenix. I go home, I tell my wife, hey, I'm thinking about quitting my job. And she's like, okay.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, and I'm thinking about starting a pest control company.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to become a bug guy. And she's like, all right.
And
then I'm like, and we're going to move from Phoenix to Detroit to do it. And she looks at me and she's like, let's freaking go.
really,
That's awesome.
No joke.
Wow.
That is sweet.
That's
No
awesome.
joke.
That's so cool.
So, and at the time we had a 2-year-old and a 4-month-old.
Oh wow.
Packed them up,
Oh
Packed
man.
them up
rolled the
away.
dice.
And
Rolled
this
the dice.
was, what year was this?
2015.
2015. Oh, so you practiced law for like 6 years.
Practiced law for 3 or 4 years. Yep, law school's 3 years. So 2012.
Okay, school, and then that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's what it was like for me too. When I was working at the company I felt like we needed to quit and start our own business. And Sailor had always been like, hey, we should do this. And I went up to her one day. I was like, I'm going to do it. Let's do it. And she's like, let's do it.
Like finally,
I'll
let's
live
go.
under a bridge with you.
Yeah.
It was just
Yeah.
like that too.
Well-
It's cool having that type of ride or die. When you start building a business, you realize there's some things you have to toss out of your life. And my book is exactly this. It talks about all the sacrifices and the steps that are required. There's a recipe, right, for success. My book is about exactly this. And some people can't do it, right? There are some things that you have to toss out of your life. I didn't golf for a few years, right? I didn't do a bunch of things that I was used to doing. I went from living off of 150 grand to living off of, no joke, 24 grand in savings, right? But then there are the big rocks in the proverbial jar.
Yeah, I've listened to a podcast. I've heard you talk about this before.
Yeah, so there's
Right.
the big stuff that you don't sacrifice. And my book's also about that. What are the things that if you're starting to sacrifice, you're doing them wrong. And that is your spouse, right? That's one of those things that it's now, will it test you? Absolutely. But then you kind of come back and reevaluate and say, hey, are we doing this right? Are we doing this wrong? Now, other relationships, absolutely. You're going to have less time for other relationships. And, but there's this concept of success, which is you're going to have to give something up. And I don't really believe, we talk a lot about, what's the key to living a balanced life? And I don't believe in living a balanced life in the short term. Right. So I look at it as what have the last 5-10 years look like? Have I spent a lot of time with my family? Have I spent a lot of time? Because when I started my first business, I remember I was sitting at my desk in the law firm and I'm like, man, I can't wait till I start my first business because I'm going to have more money and more time.
Yeah.
And I immediately had less of both of those things.
Yeah.
Like,
But
wait a
fast
second.
forward, it took me 3 or 4 years.
To get there.
Yeah. One day
Yeah.
I'm sitting at my desk in my pest control company. It's a call center in Phoenix. And my phone was like really quiet, wasn't ringing. I look at my email. No one's really emailing me. No one's coming in my office. And I'm like, dude, I could go home right now. And my company's still going to continue to grow. And I'm like, I'm going to do that. It's like 10 a.m. So I go home. And then I'm just like at home, like twiddling my thumbs. I'm like, dude, this is awesome. I have all this free time. I can do whatever I want, right? The next morning I woke up, regular time. And I'm like, what am I going to do with all my free time, right? I just went back to work, man. And I
Yeah.
haven't stopped since. And one thing I noticed is that when I didn't have to work for money anymore, I got really good at my job because I had other purposes. It's like, I'm like, I'm not doing this for money, right? I'm doing this for something else. And because of that, I realize I have this passion.
Mhm.
And, you know, as most entrepreneurs, it shifted at different phases over the last decade, but
Yeah.
it's been a fun ride.
Fun, right?
I think one of the number one things that make an entrepreneur successful is at the beginning, you have to be money motivated, right? You have to work for money. You have to be like, I need money.
Yeah.
And then once you figure out how to make money, you're just like, what is this money? Like, I'm just going to put this money somewhere and make it do its thing.
Yeah.
So I can work for growth. So I can work for a higher mindset to grow who I am. Now I can pay for health. Now I can pay for, I have more time, right? And that's how it was for me. Like once I actually started making money, I was like, money is like, it's overrated. I
Yeah.
want to work for growth. I want to grow me. I'm the biggest asset, not my bank account.
Yeah.
So once you get to that point, then you can transfer it there, and then it's different goals.
No, that's absolutely right. And you mentioned I have a psychology degree, which is pretty much useless, but there's some cool stuff. I took some cool classes. And there's this renowned psychologist named Abraham Maslow, and he came up with a hierarchy of needs. And the idea is like, hey, if you can't breathe, you don't care what your clothes look like. That's the idea, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
You got to be able to breathe first.
Yeah.
And there's like these needs, like be loved, have food, shelter, right? And I believe that there's this hierarchy or this progress of an entrepreneur or somebody that's looking for financial independence or wealth. And step one is survival. So it's similar to Abraham Maslow. It's like
Yeah.
step one is like you have to make enough money to feed your family, provide
Mhm.
shelter, like all those things, right? Survival's number one. And people spend different amounts of time at each of these stages. But I'll give you an example once I explain all of them of celebrities that have followed this. Two is status. We have this thing that, and some people might skip over this one where they just don't care if they're wearing a Gucci belt and driving a Ferrari. But most people do. They want people to know, like, hey, I'm supporting my family, I'm successful, right? And then number three, where people spend a lot of time, is freedom. So they get to this point where, like me, they're like, I don't have to work anymore. My kids would never have to work, but that's definitely not how we're going to arrange that. And so they spend a lot of time in this range of continuing to build what supports their freedom and plan into the future. And then the fourth and final stage is legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Then they start to think, okay, what's going to happen when I'm gone, right? And one of my favorite quotes is, let me make sure I don't butcher this. Our goal shouldn't be to live forever, at least on this planet. It shouldn't be to live forever. It should be to create something that does, something that outlasts us. And if you look at like Elon Musk, right? That dude's still just grinding away, right? Doesn't have to. Worth north of 50 billion or something. But you look at guys like Bill Gates, and he's all about his foundation with his wife, and I'm not saying anything about either of those guys politically because that's a different story.
Yeah,
but
another podcast.
But it's this progress, this progression that we make as entrepreneurs, and you kind of see how people respond to it differently. Elon Musk doesn't need to go into the office or be on the factory floor or whatever.
Yeah.
But
He doesn't care about that freedom part yet. Like
yeah,
he's
like
not there.
yeah, exactly. So
I don't
You know,
think you'll
you
ever care
talked
for it.
you talked about like when you realize, you know, that you're the asset, right? And it's super cliche. I grew up and my parents didn't have two nickels to rub together. And I would always hear money's not as valuable as time. Time's worth more than money.
Mhm.
And I'm like, yeah, right. Like that's the only thing rich people say. It's true. That's what rich people say, right? And the reason why is because people that have developed a system where they can make more money, they're like, I'm good. Has anyone developed a system for making more time? I mean, we can increase
God
efficiency.
does.
Yeah,
I-
that's true.
I don't know
That's
how he
true.
does. He
Let's
hasn't told
tap
us
into
that
that.
yet.
Exactly. So that's why, you know, you realize that you can replicate things, and that's why money becomes more available and less scarce than
Yeah.
time.
I want to go back to, so you've been, I would assume you've been in a lot of different mindsets, right? Like
Yeah.
you grew up with inside
Really
your family
poor,
with a
really
lot of
poor.
kids, right? I know that. And then
Yep.
you went to school, went to BYU, and then you started this pest control company. I want to talk about like what core things changed throughout those different spots in your life. What were the main like switches with your mindset where you're like, okay, that's not true? What do people need to know about that?
Oh, this is such a good topic. This is so good because I'm the epitome of the small town kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was like you know, on the baseball team, and my high school team actually won a state championship.
Ooh.
I won it with your Uncle Barry. He was playing second base. I was a catcher.
Shout out to Barry on here.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Oh,
If you're
Barry's a
listening.
stud. Love that dude. And what happens is, and there's nothing wrong with small towns. There's
Yeah.
not. There's nothing wrong with them. But I got a glimpse outside of that. I used to think that I was the best, and like that was the end all be all.
Mm-hmm.
And I had various events in my life that happened. I went to college. That was a big thing. I went to South America on my mission. I lived in Chile for a couple of years. I've lived in different cities. And so at each stage, the idea is that your mind changes and hopefully it grows. There's two basic mental makeups, and that's the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. And we've all heard about this. The fixed mindset is, I've been given what I've been given. There's nothing that I can do to change that.
Yeah.
Versus the growth mindset. So that is like, hey, I have control over my destiny. And when I go out and learn new things, make new connections, it expands what I'm capable of, right?
Yeah.
And when there were a couple of pivotal moments. One of them was on my mission, and another was after my mission when I started reading a lot about business and money.
Okay.
My mind changed. It was like, so I went from, you know, this idea that you're just trying to get by, that I think I inherited from parents that, man, they worked their butts off just trying to get 6 kids through school and into adulthood. And I respect that and I love them. So it went from that to, my dad, you know, he'd always tell me things like, money doesn't grow on trees and everything that glitters ain't gold. He had all these sayings. And I respect him and I appreciate like how I grew up. But I got to the point in my early 20s where I realized, no, money does grow on trees, literally.
Literally, fruit.
There's fruit, right? There's like, you can turn the wood from the trees into lumber,
Almonds,
and you're creating jobs and all these things. And figuratively also. Like if you look around, like everything that's in this room or wherever we look, somebody has become a millionaire building, creating, selling, marketing, advertising, distributing, whatever, that product. And so I went from this limited mindset, this fixed mindset, to this abundance mindset. And it's super cheesy and it's super hard for me to like wrap my head around it because I'm a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
But so I decided to put it to the test, and I'm like, I'm going to change how I think. I'm going to change, like, because I had all these self-imposed limitations on myself, right? Self-imposed limitations. And I just read, and I got all these mentors. So that happened. That was a big step where I'm like, okay, there's something greater out there. And if I don't go try, I'm going to hate myself.
Yeah.
while I was on my mission president, who's like one of the greatest men I've ever met, like one of my greatest mentors, big time entrepreneur. He came from Alberta, Canada, with like $2 in his pocket, rode a bus to California, big time roofing company, all the things, right? The last night in our mission, we stayed at his house, the people that were going home.
Yeah.
And he was going to give this final presentation. And my entire 2 years, I was excited about it, but everyone was tight-lipped about what the topic was.
Yes, I agree. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And so I was like, what? Yeah, the final, like, hey, these are the last things that this person who's like been in charge of you for 2 years, like been a really pivotal person in my life, these are the last things that he is going to tell you. And so I was so excited. I'm like, man, what's he going to talk about? He's going to talk about dating, getting married, like as soon as we get home. He's going to talk about going to college and getting an education. And he's going to talk about reading your scriptures every day and none of that. He talked to us about money. And I remember sitting there and I'm like, this dude's talking to us about money.
Like, money is root of all evil. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. And he recommended some books and I started reading those books. And so it became, shortly after that, in my early 20s, it was like, I'm after this. I was put on this planet to build companies, to build wealth, and to help other people do the same. And if I don't live up to that, I'm going to be held accountable someday.
Wow.
Yeah, you're going to stand in front of God and he's like, why didn't you do that?
I gave you these
tools. Gave you all the tools. Gave you the mission president.
Which is funny because 3 years before that, 4 years before that, I'm in high school thinking like, I'm just going to go get a local job, right? And now thinking I don't have tools, I don't have resources, I don't have rich parents, I don't have this, I don't have that. Thinking of all the stuff I don't have. And then all of a sudden I have this feeling like, and I hear it distinctly in my mind, like I've given you all of this, right? I've given you what's in your heart and in your mind, and you need to go do something with it. So, the rest was just... But I never got the sense that it would be easy. Yeah. It wasn't like, hey, this is going to be easy for you. It was, this is what I've given you, and this is what I'm expecting of you.
Yeah, something that Benj and I kind of have discovered as we're on this journey that we were on is just how do I word this? Is that everyone on earth can do anything they want, and God hasn't like made someone more special than someone else, but it's all about what you want to do and involving God in that. And it's, to me, for us, like specifically, we've kind of had that mindset of, hey, like, look, we've been given all these tools, all these things in our life. Like, God, this is what we're going to do, and we will do everything that you want us to do, but this is what we think we should do. So we're going to go out and do it. Like, and that's just kind of been like our mindset with everything.
Yeah. Yeah, Sailor and I would say we both grew up a lot with like the same mindset you had. Very, I wouldn't say we weren't poor though. I was very, my parents were very middle class. I mean, my dad had a salary over $100,000 a year. We lived in a nice house. I grew up with a pool in my backyard.
That's nice, dude.
But it was all the same sayings, right? It was all, you graduate from high school, you go on a mission, you go to college, you get a good job. And I had my whole life, I had never figured out the skill of thinking for yourself. I never gained that. And I don't know how I didn't. I just didn't choose to. I was lazy. And so when I got home from my mission, one of my bosses at the company I started working for, he taught me like how to think. And he was like, dude, did you know like you don't have to go to college to make money? I couldn't even like fathom that. He's like, you don't have to go to college. And I just like sat back and I was like, dude, you're freaking right.
Like, what?
I was like, I'm not going to college. Screw college. I was kind of going at the time. So I dropped out, started reading all these books. I would say, and I'm sure these are the same books that helped you, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. Like those two were just like, rich people think differently. And so I changed my mindset, completely flipped it around. And as soon as I did that, I went from being in the group of people to being all by myself. A group of people meaning everyone I knew. Just like we were talking about coming from a small town. I left the small town in my heart. Gone.
And I remember when I got home from my mission, we met shortly after, and Benj had already gone on like part of this journey of like starting to think differently than everyone else, and there was a lot of people that would like basically like tell me that like he's crazy, like dude, that guy has some things that are messed up about him, and I'm like, I don't know, I kind of like him, like he was so different that I I couldn't pick out quite yet what I really liked about him, but I could tell his mind was so different from anyone I'd ever met. And so it's interesting that you bring that up because I remember people thinking that like so
See?
different.
I
love
think
it.
this is a great example of like when it's really scary to leave the tribe, to stop thinking like, this group think. But what happens when we do is we start attracting people that are going to be pivotal in our lives, that are going to help us get to the next level, that think like we want to think.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens. That's a
Yeah.
perfect example of that. There was something that you saw in him, and it was because he was different, right? He
Yeah.
was willing to do that, which it's so hard for us because our caveman brains are like, dude, you have to stay in the tribe, because if you leave the tribe, saber-toothed tiger's going to eat you,
Yeah.
winter's going to come, like all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying necessarily we need to leave all tribes, but man, we got to question who we spend time with.
Mm-hmm.
And as entrepreneurs, one of the biggest things that we can do is just change who we spend time with and who we surround ourselves with. And mostly because who we spend time with, that changes how we think and how we act, what our behaviors are.
Yeah.
I have this kid in my church, and man, he's going through it. He just graduated from high school, or maybe he's not going to because of some problems. And I saw him at church. His mom makes him go, and he hates it. Really good kid. And I saw him the entire time. He sat in front of us, head just down, and never looked up for like a solid hour. And afterwards, I went up to him, and I'm talking to him for a bit. And I'm like, dude, do me a favor. And I know I've heard rumors, and I don't even know if I have all my facts right, but it doesn't matter. The fact set doesn't matter. Next time you're with your friends on a Friday night, just look around the group or the vehicle or wherever you are. Look around, and I want you to identify which of your friends you want to be like. And if there's nobody there that you want to be like, then you need to change your friends. And I wish I could say that the story has a happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. They keep their friend group because it's easier, it's more comfortable, it's
Yeah.
fun. And I mean, I guess the story's not over yet, but as of now, it's still the same thing for him. Drugs and problems on Friday night.
Well, I want to ask you this. I know that you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, as we are, right?
Yeah.
And we're trying to emulate Christ. We're disciples of Christ. And we know that Christ, he was with all kinds of different people, right? And he put himself in situations to be with people who I would say maybe were toxic, or people that weren't. But how do you, I guess, keep that with that in mind? How would you say, like, trying not to like eliminate everyone from your life, but also trying to keep and have good friends uplift you and push you to the next? Like I feel like there's that battle,
Yeah.
at least within myself, where I'm like, I want to be Christ-like. Like, what if I can pull them up? What if I can help them? And then there's also the other thing where it's like, okay, wait, I kind of want to surround myself with some better people that are more aligned with my standards. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and it's this struggle that we have, right? Where it's, because a lot of what I'm trying to do is to help others.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a few answers. So with with the harlots and the drunkards and all those people that Christ spent time with,
Mm-hmm.
was he spending time with them when they were committing those sins, when they were in the middle of that? I don't think so, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he was at the proverbial bar.
Yeah.
But he would, he said, like, hey, he that is perfect, let him cast the first stone,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
He came by to protect and to help. He didn't come by to hang out. It wasn't this social event for him. So it's these large amounts of time we spend with people. And if there are people that are toxic, there's this balance of how much time you spend with them, or how fast you respond to a text message,
Yeah.
right? And another thing is that you have to look at it like, okay, I'm helping this individual, and if you're looking at it with that perspective, I had this neighbor, and he was really going through it, a lot of different things in his life, and I was trying to help him for like a month, spending a lot of time with him, and I always felt terrible after I spent time with him. And I justified because he was so negative.
Yeah.
Everything that
Yeah.
could possibly go wrong in his viewpoint was
Yeah.
going wrong. And after a month or so, I got to the point where I was like, this dude is not changing. So where my perspective was to help him, I get a month into this, probably spent 40 hours with him, 30, 40, 50 hours with him. He's not changing. Then I'm like, hey man, I'm here if you need me,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to be your sounding board. I was here to help. It looks like you're not interested in that.
Yeah.
And so we have to, it's the whole like put your mask on first
Yeah,
scenario, right? People around us need help, but we have to make sure that we're strong enough, that we're optimistic enough, that our mindset is right so that we can help them. And then we have to make sure that once we are helping them, we have to do a self-assessment like, okay, am I good? Or is this person dragging me down? Is
Yeah.
this a family member
Yeah.
that's like bringing me down? Because that's a completely different scenario. I don't think Christ spent a bunch of time with people that didn't
Want to get
want
better.
him around. I think he spent a lot of time with people that he could help, right?
Yeah. That he knew was ready at that time for help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I totally see what you're saying. Like in scriptures, right? Like how many times did the Pharisees come up to him and talk to him, and then he answered, and then it was done. Versus the actual
Exactly.
stories are with of him healing and him performing these miracles, or with people who are ready.
And the
to get
leg
those.
that Christ has up on us, one
Yeah.
of the many, is that he knew the intent,
Yeah.
right?
Read
So with
your
the
heart.
Pharisees, he's like, hey, I know these guys are just trying to trip me up with my words.
Yeah.
And like make fun of me or prove me
Mhm.
wrong or whatever, that I'm not the Son of God, whatever.
Yeah.
And so he has that leg up on us. And that's what we're trying to do. Like, what's the intent of this person? Like, what is my purpose in having a relationship with them?
Yeah.
Right? And there are certain relationships that I'm going to have always. But maybe some of them are at arm's distance.
Yeah.
Maybe some of them aren't like, I have them in my house every day or whatever, right? And
Yeah.
because what we put into our head like changes how we see the world.
Yeah.
And so I think a frequent self-evaluation comes into play. Like, how do I feel after I'm with this person? Do I feel motivated? Do I feel like I want to serve other people? Do I feel like I want to be kind to people? Do I feel optimistic? And, in other cases it's, hey, I feel terrible. Like,
Yeah.
I
just
I
want to
was
go lay
gonna
in
go
bed and go.
exactly. Like I feel angry.
Yeah.
I feel like everything's working against me.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that optimism and having this viewpoint of like, hey, there's a lot that I can do. I have a lot of control over my life. A lot of it's a facade. It is, because there's so many things we don't control, right? I don't know how many friends that own solar companies, and the interest rates are just crushing these companies. $2 billion market cap company in Phoenix just announced bankruptcy like a couple of days ago.
Oh, gosh.
And, but what it does for us is it allows us to see things where others can't. So when we have this optimism, like, dude, I've lost a lot of money. I've done some really bad deals. I've been sued by partners. I've been sued by clients. I've been like sued by distributors, by my vendors, all sorts of stuff. I've had people say all sorts of terrible stuff about me. I've had all these terrible things like, that have gone on in my life. And I recognize those things, but I don't dwell on them.
Yeah, you're not going to be a victim to those things.
Those aren't, that's not the lens through which I see the world anymore, because I want to keep pushing ahead. Now, in my future, I can't guarantee a lot of things, but I can guarantee more lawsuits. I can guarantee more issues with partners. I can guarantee more failures in business. I can guarantee more lost money, but I'm going to keep doing it anyway.
Yeah.
That's the difference. That's what being around people that share our perspective, that have this anticipation for something in the future, that's the difference. The longer I'm in this game, I got this question like a few weeks ago. Somebody asked me like, "Hey, Allan, how much of your success do you attribute to luck versus your ability not giving up and blah, blah, blah."
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, the longer I'm in it, the more I attribute my success to luck or blessings, good fortune, whatever you want to call it. Timing, right? I have a business that absolutely crushed during COVID. COVID was, and it's really hard for me to say this, but one of the best things that could have happened despite all the bad that happened during it. I had nothing to do with that, right?
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing, is that the optimistic, the people that feel like they're building something that's more important than themselves, they stay in it long enough so that they have a chance at coming across some good fortune, some good timing.
Yeah, I recently read Alex Hormozy's $100 million offers, and in there, one of the first things he says in that is like, if you're in it long enough, you're gonna win sometime.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't matter how stupid or how smart you are, you're gonna win at some
That's
point.
exactly right.
So just keep pushing forward.
Yep.
One thing I want to hit on before we end, I want to talk about how your faith played a big role in just this whole journey. I know you said you served a mission in South
America and Chile.
Okay, in South America. I was gonna say South Africa. I don't know why. But with that, were there ever times like when, say for someone our age or someone maybe a little bit younger, when you're like, okay, I should have relied on God at this point and I didn't because of X, Y, and Z. Like, did you ever feel like, were you ever part of that club, or were you always just like, dude, God is with me at all times and He's my business partner, you know?
No, I think, faith is such an interesting topic for me because when I was younger, grew up in the church, and on my mission, I thought that faith was this linear thing, right? Where it's like, as time goes on, my faith increases. And if it doesn't, then I'm apostate or I'm whatever, right? And I realized that if you zoom in on that left to right upward growth, if you zoom in, you see a bunch of this.
Yeah, it looks like a heart rate monitor.
Exactly. And what's funny is that business is exactly like that. It's people look at, they say, hey, I'm an overnight success, 20 years in the making, right?
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden Alex Hormozy's on the scene. All of a sudden this guy like popped up everywhere, right? He's popping up everywhere.
Literally.
But dude, that guy had been grinding for years, right? And so my faith has been like that, where it's been, I've done some really dumb things and I've made some really big mistakes in my life. And I've had moments where my faith has been tested and I didn't always pass the test. And, I think there's moments where I wish I had a different perspective, where I got angry at a business partner and it didn't end well because I wasn't treating him like I should. So, no, like I honestly think that it's this great opportunity for us to look back and say, hey, where are the things that we could do better? But no, I've struggled, and I see a lot of people my age in their 40s that are struggling with divorce, leaving the church, like losing their faith, whatever their faith is. And, and I get it to some degree. But if there's certain things that if you lose, it doesn't matter what else you build.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of one of those rocks that I'm holding on to.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not perfect and I make mistakes all the time and I make people angry and I yell at my kids and do all these things, right? It's that like I can go build whatever. It will not matter. I at least have that foresight where some people don't have it.
Yeah.
And, for me, a lot of that's faith. Like if I lose my faith, and at times I don't think I've been close to it, but I felt like I was, right? Where things weren't going great. But if I lose that, then no, what does it matter?
Yeah.
And if I keep that perspective, it helps a little bit.
Yeah, it always humbles you and helps you
Yeah.
move forward.
Yeah, I had a bishop one time when we were in YSA. and it was like a get to know you meeting, and he was like, so what do you want to do? What are you trying to do? And I was telling him about my goals, my visions, how hard I want to push this and that. And he said something to me I'll never forget. He said, dude, I believe in you. I believe that you can get this. You can do it. And he's like, and you'll be great. But imagine how much better you could be with God. I mean, he would 10x anything you could do. And I was like, I'd never thought about how important it is to have God involved in it.
Yeah, I know. I think that's exactly right. I mean, because if our faith is based on this God that is all powerful, it's like what else needs to be said,
Yeah.
right? And one thing that I try to do with my employees is I try to align interests. So if
Okay.
there's some top level, let's say revenue goal that I want to hit,
Mhm.
I make sure to incentivize the people that are in line with that,
Mhm.
so that maybe they do X number of dollars in revenue a week or whatever, but and maybe I bonus them on that or whatever. I always talk about this. I talk about aligning interests. We should do the same thing with God, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we want to make sure that, like, for us, it's like living forever with our families. And so we want to make sure that whatever we're doing, we're in line with that, because then we have access to this power that we wouldn't otherwise have.
Yeah.
When we have this, that's the thing, is that I believe that we were created in God's image. And it's like, because of that, how could I not spend every waking hour like going after my full potential?
Mhm.
Like, I'm created in his image.
Yeah, like I can do anything.
Yeah, so it's like, why would I not? Like, even though, and dude, this world's so cool because, we have these failures, and these failures, for some reason, I can imagine a world where it's different. But our failures, if we think about them, the things that are most difficult in our life and the failures that we have, they're like, eventually we wear them as badges of honor,
Mhm.
because they become what define us, and they become everything that we want to become because we're learning from them, right? If we think about the hardest things we've ever done, it's marriage is difficult, getting along with family is difficult, going on a mission is difficult, keeping your faith, building a business, all these things, having children. What are the greatest things in my life?
Yeah,
All of those.
things. Oh, I love that. I love that perspective. Well, and truly, like, at the end of the day, like, God, who are we if we go to God and we're like, hey, God, I didn't learn anything when I was down here.
Yeah, I never failed.
Like, I never failed, right? Like, God would be like, that was not part of why I sent you down here, right? Like, we are here so we can learn, and failing is part of that process. And that's something that has taken me a long time to figure out. Like, I'm a perfectionist at heart. Like, I was your straight A student. I was your, like, I wrote every paper to the max number of words that was supposed to be in there. Like, that is who I am. And so meeting Benj, he like is like, I love mistakes, and I'm like, it's not me.
Yeah.
Let's not do that. But it's taken me some time to kind of figure that out. Is God wants us to make mistakes, and as hard as that is to make mistakes, you have to do it. It's essential to grow.
Yeah. No, 100%. It's, and I have a bunch of stories that I like to share, but the essence is, like, we live in this world where the best way to learn how to do something is to learn not how to do that.
Yeah.
Now, there are some shortcuts. We can read, we can have mentors, we can have, right? But basically what we're learning to do in order to succeed is by learning what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the best way. That's why we have pain receptors and stuff. It's like, hey, don't touch the freaking, the
The stovetop.
yeah, the stovetop. It's like, it's really hot, and it's not just, pain isn't just arbitrary. A lot of times we think that, like, hey, I can't wait to get out of this pain. It's not just arbitrary. Like, God wanted to make it so that we didn't melt all of our skin off of our body and, like, destroy ourselves.
Yeah.
That pain is a blessing,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's cool.
Yeah, he made us so we could withstand pain. We could hold on to it and grow from it.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Well, for our audience here, they're people like us, right? People who maybe are in their 9 to 5, working, slaving away.
Yeah.
Know they have more potential than maybe what they're doing. What are some, like, books or things that you would suggest? Yeah, let's go with that. What are some books that you would suggest they should start reading, or if they haven't read?
So I have, like, on my website, I have, like, my top 10 books in, like, different
Oh,
categories.
perfect.
Ooh,
So I have books for, like, developing like financial wealth, financial freedom, real estate books, personal development books. Let me think. So some of my favorites right now, one of my favorite authors, a guy named Rory Vaden, he wrote a book called Procrastinating on Purpose that I really like. Self-development book. It talks a lot about this idea of, he calls it embracing the focused imbalance versus living a balanced life. And that's just kind of the essence is, like, there's going to be times where you have to focus really hard on one thing at the exclusion of others, but that's the only way to achieve, abnormal amounts of success. I really like that book. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is really good. Robert Kiyosaki wrote another book called Cash Flow Quadrant, which changes perspective from like solopreneur situations to leveraging other people's time and money. That's a really good one.
Yeah, that one was a huge thing.
I think that's his best book, even though Rich Dad
I
Poor
agree
Dad
with you.
is more popular.
I agree with you.
Jim Collins wrote a book called Good to Great, which is really good for starting entrepreneurs, that talks about how the difference between good companies and great companies. And I love biographies, so I love learning about great entrepreneurs. And I just read Walter Isaacson's biography of Elon Musk. It was fantastic. So
Okay, so
there's
those are your top 5.
Okay,
Okay.
There's a few.
Yeah, those are some 5, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Well, if you guys are listening, I want to shout out Allan for coming on our show again. Like, we really
Happy to be
appreciate it. We know that, like, we don't know everything in the world, and so it's nice to have someone to come on the show and explain their thoughts and their mindset. And again, like, for one of the reasons why I wanted to have you come on the show is I feel like you are, like, where you were like 10 years ago. I don't know how old you are now, but where you were like
43, yeah.
Okay, 18 to 25-year-olds. Like, to
Yeah.
me, I feel like you were our target audience years ago. And so that's why I wanted you to come on the show and just, like, explain who you are and where you are now and provide confidence and show people, if they want to get there where you are, they can. It's just all up to themselves. So if anyone wants to follow you or connect with you, where should they go?
My website, allandraper.com. I'm really active on socials, especially on Instagram.
Okay.
So I'm at Real Allan Draper. I'm pretty easy to find.
Okay, perfect.
So.
Yeah, at Real Allan or
Draper.
The Real Allan?
At Real Allan Draper.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. All right. Well, that's all for you folks, and thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show, Allan.
Oh,
Appreciate
my
it.
pleasure.
Okay, we'll see you guys next Wednesday.